Section 4.4, factoring quadratic expressions. So we're going to find common and binomial factors of quadratic expressions, and then tomorrow we will factor special quadratic expressions. So again, those are the ones that we talked about that don't just start with a 1x squared. Maybe it's a 3x squared or a 4x squared, which makes it harder to find the factors. And I think after today, you'll know which are which. So starting out, we're just going to kind of look at how do we do these like when we first started multiplying two things together, which would be a binomial. X plus 4 times x plus 2, we used FOIL, right? First, outer, inner, last. So we're going to kind of work this in a backwards fashion so that we can see what we have to do. So we multiply using FOIL. First terms would be x times x, or x squared. The outer terms would be x times 2. The inner terms would be 4 times x. And the last terms would be 4 times 2. And then notice that the middle terms are like terms, so we put them together. And we get x squared plus 6x plus 8. Okay, so if we think about that in a backwards fashion, so that's why the expression is really the same, what we need to do is think about how do we get the numbers that we need to write it in that form. Okay, so we're going to do the exact same question, but we're going to kind of think it out a little bit differently. So if you want a quadratic equation, you multiply by FOIL. Yep. Yep, I multiplied those. Yep. So with FOIL, remember you're finding the right terms, you're multiplying them. Does it matter if you switch the I and the O at all? It doesn't, as long as you do them both. So most of us, we aren't really probably thinking first, outer, inner, last anymore. You just kind of do it because you've done it and done it and done it. But it doesn't matter if you switch the order. So now what we're looking for is if we want this one in factored form, we look at how do we make an x squared? We split those up. And we put a 1x with the first one and a 1x with the second one. So when that factor is a 1, it breaks down into x times x. Okay, if it's something different, we're going to do something different with that tomorrow. Then we want factors of 8 that add up to 6. So add up to that middle number. The last number is factors. The middle number is what those factors add up to. So when you first started these in Algebra 1, which was now a while ago, we looked at factors of 8. Now, this probably may not be something you have to write out. If you just want to watch, if you feel like you need it, and because you've struggled with factoring, then definitely write it out. So we're going to do factors of 8. Okay, here we're only dealing with positives, so we don't have to worry about the signs at this point. So two of the numbers that multiply to 8 would be 1 and 8. Another set of factors would be 2 and 4. Are there any others for 8? No. So then we add the two numbers that we are looking at. So when you add them together, you get, I didn't leave myself very much room. Let me change this for a second. So 1 times 8 and 2 times 4. Okay, so now I left myself enough room there. So my factors were 1 and 8. If I add them together, I get 9. Is that what the middle number is? No, if it matches, you're good. You got it on the first try. If it doesn't, then you have to go to the next one. So when I add those factors together, do I get 6? And that's what the middle number should be. So you take those two numbers and you fill them in. So it's kind of working in a backwards fashion. Yep.
Is this one problem then? Like
no.
On the test, will we have to like?
No, it's just this one, just the second part. Okay. So when you're looking for the factors, if you don't have to write down the 1 times 8 and the 2 times 4 because you can just do it, just do it. It's for those that, gosh, I know I struggled with this last time. I really need to figure out what I'm doing, then do it. Okay, so this side part right here is totally optional. I'm just kind of showing you how you're thinking about getting those factors for the problem. So the whole FOIL part at the beginning is nothing that you guys have to do. I just thought maybe by looking at that, you might understand it better. Okay, so what is the expression in factored form? So again, this one is just a 1, so the x breaks down into x times x. So one of the x's goes in the first set of parentheses, the other goes in the second one. Now, do we need factors of 9 that add up to 20 or factors of 20 that add up to 9? Okay, so here's the factors that I need. And they need to add to 9. Okay, if you know it, put them in. If you don't, then you have to start thinking, what are factors of 20? So for the next one, I'll probably just say, does anybody know it? But factors of 20 are 1 times 20, 2 times 10, 4 times 5. Now, the smaller the number, the less factors that you have to choose from. But when you add those numbers together, 1 plus 20 on the first one would be 21. We're looking for a 9. 2 plus 10 would give you 12. Again, we're looking for 9. 4 plus 5 gives you 9, and that's the one we're looking for. So the 4 and the 5 are the factors. So plus 4, plus 5. Okay, now if you could just give me x plus 4 times x plus 5 at the beginning and wouldn't need to write any of that bottom stuff, don't write it. Okay, it's only for those that just are like, I don't get it, I need to write that extra step down. Because it will work every time. If you do it the same every time, it will work. Some people can just go, okay, 20, 4 and 5, they add up to 9. I'm going to write it in. That's all they have to do. But for others, they need to actually see the numbers and then add them together, which is totally fine. Okay, let's do one that isn't just a plus plus. So again, the x squared has a 1 with it. I'm going to split that up. It goes x in the first set of parentheses, x in the second one. Now, this one I am going to write down the factors because of the negative in there, because that does make a difference. So we need factors of negative 72, and I'm just leaving some room here. Okay, so first of all, let's think of the factors, and then we'll make sure that we are putting the negative with the right one and that kind of thing. So initially, we want factors of 72, and they're going to add to 14. So I'll simplify that part a little bit. Factors of 72. Is 1 and 72 probably going to be the one? No. Most of the time, it's the numbers that are the closest together. So 1 and 72, there's lots of space in between. Unless that middle number is a super high number, you're probably never going to use the 1 and something with it. Okay? But you can certainly write it down if you want to. So 1 and 72. There's a 2 and a 36. Again, that's not very close. 3 and 24. I'm doing that in my head. I better check that one. I think that's right. 4, let me see. 4 and 18. 6 and 9. I'll put some more space in there. And then that's probably about it, because 6 and 9 are getting super close together. So, what? What one? Oh, 6 times 9 is 54. Thank you. 6 and 12. Are there any more after that? 8? 8 and 9. That's the one I was thinking of. 8 and 9 are close together. Okay, there we got it. Thank you. So when you get to the numbers that are right next to each other, you're probably done if you have started at the beginning. Usually it's the numbers that are right next to each other, not always. So when I look at these and I add those together, I get 8 plus 9 is 17. That's not what we're looking for. But the thing with this one is we have a negative number and it has to add up to a positive number. So how are negative numbers made when we multiply? One is negative, one is positive, okay? So if the one in the middle, okay, I'm going to write a little direction over here. need negative 72, and it needs to add to 14. So would you think that the higher number should be negative or the higher number should be positive on this one? Because when we're looking at it, one has to be negative, one has to be positive, but when you add them together, it has to equal a positive. So I would say the reverse of what you just said. The higher one should be positive and the lower one should be negative, since we want a positive one in the middle. Okay, so I'm going to put high positive, low negative. Okay, so if we go back and do that, and I'm going to change colors so you can kind of see that part. Okay, so if we do high number positive, low number negative, the sum would be 72 minus 1, or 71. That's not even close. If we do negative low number, positive high number, and we add them, we get 34. So this is the sum part of it. Low one negative, high number positive, you get 21. We're getting closer. Low one negative, high one positive, we get 14. Is that what we were looking for? That's what we were looking for. So this 14, we found it. So whatever signs they are, that's the signs that go in your factors. So we had a negative 4 and a positive 18. And that's what goes in there. So whatever sign the middle one has to be, the higher number has to be that sign, if they're two different ones. Okay, let's do one more of those. Okay, so this one looks a little bit different, right? Now, when I'm looking at this one, I don't really like a negative with the x part of it, okay? I don't know if that's the same for you guys, but could we multiply through this thing by a negative 1 if we wanted? We could, and that means we change all the signs, right? So if that negative bothers you when you're factoring, you can certainly do that. That's what I would do. I'm just looking to see what we need to get at the end. I'm going to take a negative 1 out, which is just like factoring that 1 out. And then we get x squared minus 13x plus 12. Okay, so it gets that negative away from the x squared term, and then you only have to worry about positive numbers at the end. Yep.
How did you do that again? You just multiplied it?
Yep, so if you take a negative 1 out of all of those, it changes all the signs, basically. But you still have to sit it outside.
So it's kind of like elimination, what we would do with elimination.
Yep, if you needed a negative number, yes.
Okay.
Yep. Okay, so now, what do we need factors of, 13 or 12? 12, so we need factors of 12, and we need them to add up to what? A negative 13. So I'm going to put add up to a negative 13. Okay, so we'll kind of do that in 2 steps here. And the negative 1's just going to be there, so you don't have to worry about it. So when we factor, you still have to set it out there. So I'm splitting up my x's first, because that always happens first. I need factors of 12 that add up to negative 13. Okay, so I have 1 times 12. Well, that kind of looks like a 13, doesn't it, if you add them? But we need them to be a negative 13. So what do I have to do? Both of them are negative. So when you're looking at it, when you make a negative number out of a positive one, both of them have to be negative. So both positive or both negative. If there's one of each, then the higher number gets to be whatever sign that middle one has to be. So they can't both be positive and get a negative 13, so you have to change them both to negative numbers. So negative oops, that didn't change right away. Negative 1 plus negative 12 is negative 13, and that's what we want. So we get minus 1 minus 12. So remember when I said it rarely happens? Well, here's one time that it did happen when the 1 times the number actually worked. If it was more like if it's a positive number and you need a negative one in the middle, it happens kind of a lot, but it just kind of depends on the numbers that you get. Now, what if you do this and you're not for sure if you got it right? What can you do? Multiply it back out using FOIL and see if you got what you got. So here I would go like this. I'm going to just throw this in there. You don't have to do this, but if you got something and you're like, oh, I don't think that looks right, I'm going to check it out. Easy to FOIL. So negative 1, and then I'm going to do first terms. X times x is x squared. X times 12, negative 12 would be negative 12x. Negative 1 times x would be negative 1x. Negative 1 times negative 12 would be positive 12. X squared minus 13x plus 12. Multiply the negative back through. And that should match what you started with. If it doesn't, then you got it wrong. Then you should go back and do something again. This check part is only an optional thing. Again, that would be probably just to use what you have. So let's practice a few. So grab a piece of paper. It can be scratch paper or assignment, whatever you want to do it on. Let's do these two first. If you can get it without writing the factor to whatever and add up to whatever, totally fine. If you can't, definitely do the factors and the sums. And when I show you, I'll show you both. So just try those two. So what are factors of 40 that add up to 14? 4 and 10. Anybody think of that right off the top of their head? If you can do that, go for it. If you don't, you're looking at factors of 40 and add up to 14. 1 and 40 does not work. That's 41. 2 and 20 does not work. That's 22. 3 doesn't go in there. 4 and 10. That adds to 14. We are done. Okay, so I'm kind of doing the sum and the product at the same time. And then over here it would be x plus 4, x plus 10. Does it matter if I do x plus 10, x plus 4? No. You can switch the order as long as you have the right thing inside. So if you did x plus 10 times x plus 4, totally fine. How about factors of 30 that add up to negative 11? 5 and 6, are they both positive or both negative? Both negatives. So here in this one, what I'm going to do first is I need a positive number that adds up to a negative number. Positive numbers are either two positives or both negative. That's what I do first, because then when I'm trying to find my sum, it might look different. Well, since the number in the middle has to be negative, I'm not using the first one. Both are going to be negative this time. 1 and 30, if you do negative 1 times negative 30, that gives you a negative 14 in the middle. 2 and 15 gives you a negative 17 in the middle.
Shouldn't the first one be negative 1 times negative 30?
Oh, 30, I put 13. Thanks. I'm like, that should be going down instead of up. 30. That would be negative 31. Sorry about that. 3 and 10. That would be negative 13. So look at my numbers are going smaller. That should be a hint if they don't go smaller. 4 doesn't go in there. 5 and 6. And that's what someone said at the beginning. So -5 and -6 is -11. We have found the right one. And again, if you don't need to do the table part, don't do it. Don't let it mess you up. If you can think of them in your head and keep going, okay, 6 and 7, 8 and 9, you know, whatever you have to do, that's totally fine too. Just make sure your signs are right. And then there's one more. Let's practice this one too. This is where you have that negative in the front. So first thing, when the x squared is negative, you're going to factor it out. And then change all the signs of the terms that are left. So factor that one. We need factors of -32 that add up to -14.
So it's only one number negative the next one.
Mm-hmm. So in this one, I'm just going to talk this one through because I just did it. I factored a -1 out because that x squared was negative. We always want to work with a positive number if we can. You do have to list it on the outside. You can't just say x plus 2 and x minus 16 without the negative on the front. Then I looked at changing all the signs with the items that were left. So we need a -32 that adds up to a -14. A negative number is found by taking a positive times a negative. This time your highest number is going to be negative because the middle one has to be negative. So I said high is negative, kind of off to the side. Then I looked at my factors. I did 1 and 32. The highest one has to be negative, so that would add up to -31. That one doesn't work. I went to the next one. 2 times -16. Again, the lowest number is positive. The highest number is negative. When you add them together, you get -14. That's what we wanted, so I stuck them in the parentheses, and then we were done. Okay, so if you do that same kind of methodical approach to it every single time, you'll get them. You just have to keep thinking. If you do it in your head, sometimes it's hard to find the numbers that we're looking at. Yep? It doesn't matter. No, you could have these two switched as well. You could do -1 and then x minus 16, x plus 2. When you're multiplying, it doesn't matter what order you multiply, you still get the same thing. Yep?
Earlier you said that you take the sign of the middle number. What is that for then?
Okay, so on this one, let's just kind of look at this one. When we factor the -1 out, we need a negative number, factors of a negative number. The only way you can get that is one positive and one negative, right? So that's when I said one of each. How do you decide which one gets the positive or negative without doing so many things? If the middle one has to be negative, that means the highest number has to be negative. If the middle number is positive, the highest one has to be positive. And that's only when it's negative. If there's a positive number, then it's 2 positives or 2 negatives, and it depends on what the middle one is. Okay? I think this was the point where we stop. Let me look. Yes. We're going to stop at these. So just kind of a review of factoring. It's been a long time. For some, it might be like, yep, I totally remember how to do this. This is easy. For some, they're like, nope. So do some practice and write out that factored part if you need to. Okay, so the greatest common factor is a common factor of the terms in the expression, the common factor with the greatest coefficient and the greatest exponent. So with this one, we need to actually look at these two terms, and a lot of times if there's only 2 terms, there's something you can take out of each, and that's that greatest common factor. So when I look at factors of 6 and factors of 9, what's the greatest number that I can take out of both of those? 3. So when you look at factors of 6, they're only 2 and 3. or 1 and 6, you can't really take anything out of the 9 except for the 3. So we're going to take out a 3. What's the highest factor of n that you can take out? The n squared or the n? N. And again, it has to be taken out of both of them. So on this one, you have to take the lowest exponent that you're looking at. Now, when you're saying what is left, it's 6 divided by 3. You have 2 left. N to the second minus n to the first gives you the n that is left. Because when you multiply them, remember you add the exponents. When you divide, you subtract the exponents. So it's kind of subtracting there. 9 divided by 3 gives you 3. And n divided by n gives you no n's left, or when you subtract them. Factor out greatest common factor of numbers and variables. Okay, now if you multiply it back out, 3n times 2n would be 6n squared. 3n times 3 would be 9n. If you multiply that out really quickly and you don't get what you started with, you have done something wrong. And a lot of times it's with your variables that you get the wrong exponent. So we're going to stop with that one now. And then I'm going to change the assignment a little bit. I'm going to go to number 34. Okay, so instead of going to 40 even, let's go to 34 even.